Hi, I'm Tim Linsdau, a video producer and a Christian. And the last part brings me to my discussion on creation versus evolution. There's nothing new about the arguments between creation and evolution, and I mean the creation that's presented in the Bible, in Genesis. It presents a story of how God, this incomprehensible being, all-knowing, omniscient being, could create everything that we sense around us. Versus evolution, which really was touted originally by just one person, Charles Darwin. And for what I remember and have read, it really came from his rejection of the doctrine of hell presented in the Bible. And I think I can understand that feeling and emotion, that how could God create hell? How could there be such a place? Well, that's a theological discussion based on the fact that God is perfect and His law requires perfection. And that's what Jesus Christ was all about, was creating a way for us to be forgiven, to live with God in heaven. But my argument here is with evolution and creation. And I've read dozens and dozens of articles on the subject, several books on the subject, and it really comes down to just a worldview that you have. Either you believe what's in the Bible, what God has presented there, that He created everything, or you believe it happened by accident. And there's some simple things to look at. I live near a vast desert area that's had a lot of violent nature, catastrophic natural events that have happened. And if you go into some of the canyons, you'll see layer upon layer of different rock and soil layers. And of course, one of the most famous are the layers that you see in Grand Canyon. But one of the simplest arguments that I've seen for a catastrophic event that's presented in Genesis, the worldwide flood, you're seeing the remnants of that flood. What you have to understand is how catastrophic it was, how extreme it was, to lay down layers of soil and mud that would solidify under tremendous pressure into the rock layers they are. But getting back to my original statement about these layers you see in the desert, if you believe that these layers accumulated over great time, even deep time, one thing you have to remember is that there's going to be erosion from water and wind, whatever natural forces. And that's a big argument with the Grand Canyon, that it's been formed by river flow over millions of years. And yet, if you go in and see their science demonstration at the Grand Canyon, that it's actually an open crack in the Earth's surface that's the initial creation of that. But in these layers, you will not see erosions. You'll not see water passage erosions within those layers. They're very tight and compact. The ones you see in the desert are very plain to see. You'll see boulder layers and then soil layers. And there's nothing in between. It's flat. That meant that had to happen very quickly and very catastrophically. That's just one example that something happened very quickly. But also the incredible complexity in the human cell. You must think about that. It's incredibly complex. And it's like trying to form a bridge across a chasm with no way to get from here to there. That's how these complexities function. They're not reducible. If you take something away from that cell, which would have had to have been formed through an accident, it couldn't exist. It had to be made, engineered, all at once to work. That is another example. But like so many things in our world, when people invest in things, time, treasure, they want it to be real, they create inquisitions. Even happened in the Christian church. They created inquisitions to force people to accept something that's supposed to be accepted personally. And they will develop an inquisition. We have one with global warming now, which has tremendous doubts on both sides as to why and where. But there's evidence to show that the heat increase that's occurred over some time occurred before the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So there's another argument to show that the science we're using may not be accurate. It's being supported by money, because the grants and things that are available to research people, they have to agree with the present argument, the present inquisition, to succeed. And it happens in so many things. You've seen doctors in the 19th century who were trying to get people to be cleaner, to at least wash their hands between procedures. They didn't understand microbiology and the germs that could be transmitted. It seems real simple to us now, but the doctors in those days had to really argue for it. Like Dr. Mayo, the founder of the Mayo Clinic, he had to get through those arguments that we should be clean and sterile in these environments. And there were people actually, quashing that. No, that doesn't mean anything. But it did, and we know it today. So you should be careful about what you accept. Take a good study of what arguments being presented on both sides. There are some terrific organizations now, Institution of Creation Research, Answers in Genesis, and other organizations. These are science-based organizations. They have people from, the highest institutions of learning, master's and doctor's degrees, all studying this diligently to see what is true. Give them a chance. Give them some time to make their arguments, and weigh it in the balance. What makes the most sense? Which best follows the model? Is it the creation story, or is it evolution? And give it time. Really think deeply about that. Does it make sense? Is there evidence? Some of you may be familiar, if you've been in the mountains, where there's scree fields, and then what it is, it's the remains of rocks falling off cliff faces. And they can actually measure the amount of rock falling off those cliff faces over time. And you realize that time has to be relatively short, otherwise there'd be no cliff face left. That's another example in nature that you can see the deep time doesn't work well. They're doing a lot of research on the ice cores. There's arguments over that as to whether you can actually measure time over the layers of ice. And the argument there is it could have been in a catastrophic environment of things happening over and over and over very rapidly. Give it some thought, give it some time. Read books on the subject other than the mainstream and see if they make sense. I guarantee you to help you in understanding more accurate science, and if you're a Christian, deepening your faith and helping the non-believer to see his way to truth. So give it a try. Thank you. Tim Linsdau. Like and comment on my video, whether you agree with one side or the other, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.